Welcome to Joy in the Breakthrough, a podcast where we'll be talking to a wide range of leaders from different generations and backgrounds who have found power in being broken open. I'm Connie Lindsay.
And I'm Anna Valencia. We are your hosts, and we believe that our challenges can lead to breakthroughs. And we want to share those insights with you.
We hope these stories will inspire you to explore the I'm possible in you.
Thank you for joining us. We heard you were coming straight from the house floor, so we know how busy your time is, and we're just so grateful that you said yes to this. I'm going to do a little quick bio of you, but before I do, I just want to tell our listeners how this came about, because Connie and I are big on manifesting, and we went to this personal pack event, and it's a small room, and a lot of women in the room and men allies, and we heard you speak and we're just blown away. This is my first time hearing you in person speak, and I love how authentic you are, and just you're not talking points, you're just very generous and gracious with your time with everyone. And right after the event, and this is where Connie and I talk about being courageous and bold and going after what you want in life and making that ask even when it could be difficult. I remember going right up and I said to Connie and our producer Anna Deshawn, I was like, let's go and ask her to be on the podcast.
Exactly.
It might be a long shot, but let's do it. And you were so gracious to say yes. So to our listeners, if you don't ask,
you don't get.
You don't get. You don't know. So I'm just going to open it up.
The old adage, closed mouths don't get fed.
That's it.
So,
That's it.
I think I believe deeply in alignment. And so, here we are.
Exactly.
Yes, I do believe in alignment. And then I saw you this summer somewhere too. And I was like, I'm not stalking you. I think this is who you are. And you were so nice. So I just want to give a little bit of our listeners who may not be familiar with you, if they're living under a rock and don't know you because you are a rock star. Ayanna was the first woman of color elected to the Boston City Council, first in 100 years. When I read that, I was like, wow, we have so much work to do. She was the first woman elected to Congress from the Commonwealth, woman of color elected to Congress from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. She describes herself as an activist, legislator, and survivor. For many of you who may not know this, she actually has roots in Chicago. Her mom was a community organizer at the Chicago Urban League, which Connie and I love, and they throw an amazing gala here.
And I sit on the board of the Chicago Urban League, so your mom left a wonderful legacy, has a wonderful legacy with us as well.
And we love this mantra, and I want to share it with everyone. Connie and I just felt it in our soul when we read it, is bringing the people closest to the pain, closest to the power, which drives and informs your legislative policy making process. And Connie, I know, is going to open with our first question, but that really resonated with both of us.
Well, once again, we just want to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your incredibly important, impactful, and busy schedule to join us. Anna told our listeners a little bit about your background. My first question is, how did your upbringing influence who you are and lead you to your why that you're living right now?
It all began with my mother. I think that's the most important part of my resume. And just to give you a sense of the sort of soil with which I am rooted. My mother, there was a certain point where she was mid-career. She had been laid off, and she had started taking different tech and computer classes and things like that to be more competitive in the workplace. And it was a very demoralizing experience because ageism is very real. People are living longer by the grace of God and medical advances. And sadly, because of, social constructs, and particularly for Black women, also working longer. I mean, retirement doesn't even seem like a real option. And so she asked me to look at her resume to give her some feedback. And I was looking at her resume, and I said, Mommy, and I'm not ashamed to say that even in my adult years, she was Mommy. And I said, Mommy, here's your problem. The first thing that you have on this resume is that you are Ayanna Pressley's mom. And I said, I'm mommy, I'm nobody. I'm your child, your only child, your baby girl. I'm an aide, to an elected official whom I respect and you respect, but that means nothing to no one. Like, you need to take that off. People probably think you're very eccentric. And she said, you can change anything that you want on this, but that stays,
Oh,
because
beautiful.
being your mother is my greatest achievement. So I wanted to share that, just to give people a sense of the soil with which I'm rooted. So I had a mother who loved me fiercely and who was a unapologetically proud Black woman. My first coloring book was inspired, or produced rather, by the Chicago Defender. And I remember coloring the images of Black children with afros with their fists saying nation time. And so my mother told me early on, to be Black is a beautiful thing, something I want you to be proud of, but you have been born into a struggle. And I have an expectation that you will do your part in the struggle, in the work of liberation of Black people and other marginalized people. And that might sound like a lot to place on the shoulders of a child, but because my mother raised me alone, my father, is a brilliant man and has gone on to do incredible things as a college professor and a published author. But for many years, he was in the throes of addiction and in and out of the criminal legal system. So my mother was raising me alone. So it felt very much like it was my mother and I versus the world. So for those reasons, she never patronized or placated me. I was like a little human. So the final thing I would just say on that, and it is for those reasons, based on those dynamics, that I saw the humanity of my mother early on, because it was just the two of us. And so I was there when she went through breakups. I was there when she was devastated that she trained white men that were promoted over her. I knew about that. I was there when she was in great pain physically from uterine fibroids, and we didn't even really understand what that was and why it was so extreme. And she had to have a hysterectomy early, and then went back to work too soon because there's no paid leave, and collapsed on the street. I was aware of the fact that I was very young and a latchkey kid, taking care of myself without babysitters when my mother had to work late hours, and that was to be a secret. But she couldn't afford childcare. But she was afraid if people knew that she would lose custody of me. So it's all of those things that gave me a sense of my mother as a woman, a Black woman, outside of her being my mother. A lot of children, it takes many years for them to see their parents' humanity, but I knew my mother's struggle. And so it was this interesting dichotomy to have this unapologetically proud Black woman who fought fiercely for me to ensure that I'd be deprived and denied not an opportunity, worked multiple jobs so that I could go to Francis Parker and Lincoln Park School and be on a trajectory in life. And yet, for all of her strength, for all of her brilliance, she was still living in marginalization. And she was also a survivor of domestic violence. So I was also privy to that. So I saw my mother, someone trying to beat everything out of her humanity, her self-esteem, her self-worth. And so those experiences, married with the fact that my mother was a proud Democrat and a super voter and took me with her to vote in every single election, and also a woman of unwavering faith, that of a mustard seed that I saw move mountains in my life every day to provide for us. So it's the confluence of all of those things, being rooted in that soil, being rooted in the church, seeing the injustices my mother lived with, and then going to Parker.
Yes.
All of these things have set me on this pathway of service, and in particular of advocacy of the most marginalized. And because my mother was a super voter, and we would read the paper together and watch Sunday shows together, I learned early on that what was the foundational to many of these inequities was federal policy. So that never left me. So I know I've offered a lot there. It's probably obvious that I'm the granddaughter of a Baptist preacher. My grandfather, the Reverend James E. Eccles, who pastored a storefront church on the south side of Chicago, may he rest in peace and power. My mother, who transitioned, some 11 years ago, may she rest in peace and power. But that's how I've arrived in this place.
I think it's amazing because it does give the story of how you came to be who you are. And as you were talking, I was reminded of a song we sang in church, like a tree planted by the water, I shall not be moved. And you embody all of that, both in the narrative of your life, and just, I honor you for the transparency in you sharing that. It really strengthens a lot of us who have similar lived experiences, but might not necessarily share them as eloquently as you do, but you are touching so many people by telling your story, and we thank you for that.
What's up, Chicago? I'm Darius Caffey, and I invite you to join me for our season finale episode of The Table on Air with our first returning guest and our show creative director, Terrell Stanley.
You are one of the large reasons that I came out to my parents is because I was in love with you.
Join the conversation with us on Tuesday, December 5th at 7:30 p.m. on CAN-TV Cable Channel 19, streaming on cantv.org, and available on the CAN-TV Plus app. Experience the power of community television.
You touched something in my heart. You're talking about your mom having to kind of start over when maybe midlife and career. And my mother at age 60, I said this in another episode, my mom could have been a CEO of a company, right? A Fortune 500 company, had she been born in a different era and maybe had more opportunities, but she didn't. She didn't have the opportunity to go to college, and her family could not afford it. And so at 60, she worked as a teacher's aide at a nonprofit. And made maybe $20,000 at the height of her career. And the budget cuts happened in Illinois under a Republican governor, of course. And they came in and said, if you don't have your master's, if you don't have your college degree, take away 20 years of experience, you're gone. So at age 60, she was forced out. And I remember seeing on her the self-esteem drop, her self-confidence, everything. And it was heartbreaking to watch and have her try to kind of recover of what she would do next. And then also the financial impact on my parents, because my dad is also a retired union painter now. So what would happen if she had to draw into Social Security early, or all these things. And so like you and your mom, I understand how that feels. And sometimes the reverse of becoming, I don't want to say caretaker, but seeing your parents' humanity it comes to you sometimes at an earlier age than others. So
yes, absolutely. And that is why BIPOC children by and large are adultified at such an accelerated rate because of what we're proximate to. And also, what we experience as well, which is why I'm a firm believer that resilience is romanticized and highly overrated. It comes from great hardship,
Yes.
But ageism is very real, and it's an issue that I have, because of my exposure to that, now that I serve as the vice chair of the Task Force on Aging and Families. It's an issue that I've made a priority, and anytime I'm doing civil rights work and we are talking about discrimination, I ask that it's included. So I'm always drawing from those lived experiences, and I think that further makes the case for why a representative government matters. It's not for contrived moments of kumbaya. It's not for better looking pictures, though, I'm pretty cute. It's
for sure.
It's because, we call the question, a different question than that of if policymakers are all working from the same myopic view, monolithic, homogenized viewpoint. You need that diversity of perspective, opinion, and thought and lived experience, because we'll call different questions. And then that diversifies the issues that are championed and the policies that are advanced.
And as we watch and pay attention to the work that you do legislatively, as a sister who's moved into that modern elder category, I'm always delighted when I hear you say that. And as I've said before, I define a modern elder who is a person who is as curious as she is wise. So thank
I
you
love that.
for helping us
I
to do
love
that.
that. Listen, y'all, I'm closer to that than the other. In February I turn 50,
All right,
so
exactly.
I'm in full on perimenopause. If y'all want to have me come back and talk about that,
It's
this has been a
huge.
personal ministry of mine because we do not get the education. My comms director, who's on the line right now, he's a man. He's not even flinching because I have been talking to anyone who will listen. Why didn't anyone tell us?
It's so
There
true.
are so many more things, but y'all have me back some other time.
We
That's the
definitely
conversation
will.
for
And
another day.
I'm calling it marvelous womanopause because we're not men and we're not pausing. So it's marvelous
Okay.
womanopause.
Okay, I like a rebrand.
How about it?
Okay.
Connie's
All right.
always the rebrander. And that's why we have these, our pod is different. We wanted to have an intergenerational conversation. So Connie and I have been co-mentoring each other. And when we started this podcast, because we want to have these conversations through the whole span, right? Because we know women are thinking these things and we need a space to talk about it and be honest and transparent. And so I wanted to get to a little bit about you too, about part of this is about telling us when there might have been a moment, a pivotal moment, or a time that you felt like you might break open to only find yourself break through to joy on the other side. And is there a moment you could share with our audience that you had in your long span of your life?
Okay, I want to be mindful of time. I'm going to give 3. I'm going to list them, but I probably won't editorialize them, okay?
Okay.
But if there's
Okay.
a pointed question you have about any of them, that's fine. Okay, so the first is when I was running for the Boston City Council, when I had an epiphany that I could run authentically as myself. I had done an interview, and when it was over, the interviewer told me, I was really looking forward to interviewing you. You're so animated, so interesting. But the second the camera turned on, you turned off. And I watched the interview back and I realized that I was being performative, not in a way that was not genuine, but that I was replicating the mannerisms, the affect, the verbiage, the tonality of the white men that I had worked for. I
Yes,
did
I
not
feel
know
that.
that I could be me. I thought that what I had to do was demonstrate my fluency in sort of the signaling that shows I understand this world and how I'm to move. I mean, I aged myself. I was wearing ascots. I don't even know if y'all know what that is, but I was like in, just heavy brooches and shawls and anything, and I was very young. But I thought I had to age myself to be taken seriously, and I thought I had to take on this persona. And so when I realized in that moment that I could actually just be myself, I didn't have to put on a character. That was incredibly freeing. There was a breakthrough in that. The second is certainly with my alopecia. For those of you who don't know, I live with the autoimmune disease alopecia. I actually have alopecia totalis. So I was robbed of all the hair on my head, my face, and my body in about a 5-week period. It was a transformation not of my choosing, and very hard. Although it doesn't threaten my life, that doesn't mean it doesn't affect it. I experience bullying, discrimination, harassment. It's very disruptive for people. A bald Black woman, it challenges societal and conventional norms of what is appropriate, what is professional, what is feminine, what is pretty. But it's been a breakthrough for me because I had been so focused on what I was losing, especially after I had spent many years growing my hair out, wearing natural protective styles, loving that, feeling in alignment. When I grew my hair out from chemically relaxing it and then saw myself in the mirror and then was wearing Senegalese like waist long twists, I felt like I met myself for the first time, So I'd been in this hate relationship with my texture and my hair, and then I was finally there. And so it was very hard to make that transition, but I'd been so focused on what I was losing that I didn't realize what I would gain. And I gained an alopecia community. And my husband actually said, it's your choice. If you want to wear a wig, I support you. I love you no matter what. He said, but in my opinion, alopecia did not rob you of your beauty. It revealed it.
That's it.
He
That's
said,
it.
inside and out, I can see your cheekbones now and the shape of your eyes. And he said, so, baby, you don't need hair to rock a crown. So that was a huge breakthrough. So since I did unpack them a little bit, I won't go to the third, and I'll just end there. Yeah.
Well, I think when you talk about hair, the Crown Act, we could not have you here and not talk about the Crown Act. The comments that you made on the floor were tremendous. Share with our listeners a little bit, or as much as you can, about the Crown Act and the passing of that, which is liberating for so many Black women in particular around our hair.
Sure. Well, I got a lot of hate about that, actually, because people just didn't understand. Look, if you're not marginalized, you don't understand that we have to legislate and litigate for all the things that are a birthright for you.
That's it. That's it.
Navigate the world exactly as you entered it, and to do something as simple as wearing your hair as it grows out of your head.
That's
okay?
It.
So we have to litigate and legislate that which is a birthright for others, in particular, cis white men. So the Crown Act is federal legislation, but there's also numerous state bills. In fact, I think, so I'll have to have somebody give me a note to get it correct, but how many states have passed the Crown Act? Massachusetts is among them. But so a number of states have passed the Crown Act. It's banning race-based hair discrimination. And so if you experience race-based hair discrimination for wearing your hair in locks, in twists, in an afro with extensions, a weave, a baldy, whatever, and you believe you didn't get an interview because of it, or you weren't promoted because of it, or you were fired because of it, in any way you experience discrimination, now you have grounds really for legal recourse, because it is a violation of your civil rights. It is against the law. So we haven't passed it federally yet. It passed the House, the Crown Act, to ban race-based hair discrimination, but it has not passed the Senate. But again, it is making great traction in states throughout the country.
And I would just say that it liberated so many women. I spent my career in corporate America, and so many Black women became comfortable saying, Connie, is it okay if I wear my braids to a board meeting? And just as you've said, that is who you are. Come as you are. It does not affect your brilliance. So thank you, and all those who work to let people see us truly as who we are, because there's power in that.
Yes.
There's just
Absolutely.
power in that.
Yeah,
And I know we're at time, but I want to end with one little question, one question we like to ask all of our listeners. How do you define joy?
So anyone who knows me knows that the thing I read the most is poetry. And more than any political biographies. I mean, I read my briefs. I do my homework every day, okay? Don't get me wrong about that. And I read the news. But outside of that, my favorite thing to read is poetry. And so Maya Angelou has been has had a huge impact on my life. And I had this rare experience where we were both in a green room at the same time going to do an interview. And I timidly, meekly approached her. And we exchanged some words, and then I asked her if she would autograph something for me. And all she wrote on it was joy, exclamation point, and then she signed it. And to be honest, there were very few. It's really fairly recent that people even use the word joy, if you really think about it.
For sure.
So this happened, 25 plus years ago. And I was like, joy, here she is, an author, a scholar, an orator, a poet. She could have written anything, and she wrote joy. And a dear friend framed that for me later, and I still have it to this day. But so what is joy to me? It is something that is enduring, and that when you have it, you must fight like hell to preserve it.
Yes.
I used to say that joy is an act of resistance. And I won't pretend that that's not true. But I don't say that today because it still is your joy being in the utility of labor. And I believe that we deserve to be joyful. We deserve Black joy. We deserve to just be without agenda, without utility, beyond our labor. We deserve that sort of enduring peace that comes with real joy.
We love that.
Amen to that.
Thank you, because Connie and I often say happiness is fleeting, and so that was
Yes.
why joy is our word for joy in the breakthrough. It is
Yes.
that deep sense, and for
Yes.
different interviews, people define it differently. But
you brought us joy.
you brought us so much
By
joy,
sharing who you
so
are with
much
us.
joy in our hearts and
And
our
we're just
soul.
grateful.
And thank you so much for taking the time and for saying yes. We will never forget it. And next time you're in Chicago, please let Connie and I know. We'd love to take you to our favorite spots or hang.
You know that, and I have to say, without getting emotional, thank you to Chicago, to the city that raised me. Truly, the city of Chicago gave me my roots and my wings, and I would, certainly that married with the extraordinary love of my mother, and our abiding faith, and our enduring joy is why I'm in Congress today. So thank you, Chi-Town.
Thank
you
you
for letting your life speak.
Thank you,
Blessings.
Congresswoman. Blessings.
Take
Yes.
care.
Take care.
This was an amazing episode. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley was everything for us and more. And we're going to close out on a very strong say less from Connie, because when you say less, you say more. So Connie, what do you have after this inspiring conversation?
You're
we
right.
had?
I'm still just totally vibrating from that exchange, the authenticity and the joy that came
Yes,
through.
the
There's
joy.
something about that. So what came to mind for me as I thought about our conversation, and hopefully what this segment will mean for our listeners, was letting your life speak. Parker Palmer wrote a book called Let Your Life Speak. And when I heard Congresswoman Pressley talk about her life, she was letting it speak, but in a way that was most eloquent because of her candor and transparency. So my question for you is, how will you let your life speak? Understanding and realizing that being truly who you are is the power that can propel you to the I'm possible in you.
Thank you, Connie, again, to bring it in an eloquent way to end our show. So we hope that you join us for Join the Breakthrough again on Monday evenings, and we'll be actually on our episodes Monday evenings at 7 p.m. live chatting. So join us on YouTube, check us out, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.